are really, really happy to have investors being able to join us today. If you already have seen some of our latest Kingscrowd Capital Investors event, we did a couple recently with Cyan Biotechnologies, also Rise Robotics, and we should have a couple more coming out in the next couple of weeks. For those who don't know me, I'm Leah Bouhelier-Gautreau, Senior Investment Associate at Kingscrowd. And you may have seen my name if you follow our newsletter, which you can subscribe to at newsletter.kingscrowd.com. You may have seen me on Kingscrowd podcast as well. And basically, my colleague Teddy and I review all the Reg CA and Reg A plus deals that are available and raising on equity crowdfunding platforms. So we have a deep understanding of what is happening in the crowdfunding space. And when we find company that is extremely interesting, we have the chance to be able to invest through Kingscrowd Capital. This is what happened with Healthcare Original. I'm very proud to say that we are investor in this company, and Healthcare Original is a company that is performing extremely well on equity crowdfunding platform right now. The company already raised about $800,000 through Reg CF and is already over $2 million if you combine that number with Reg D. So here we know that we have a lot of interest for Healthcare Original from not only our own users, but also people that follow the company on WeFounder or on social media. That is why today I am very happy to be here on this webinar with Sharon Samjitsingh, which is founder and CEO of Healthcare Originals. Today, what we're going to do is that we're first going to go deep a little bit into Healthcare Original and try to understand what the company really is about. Then my colleague Teddy will be able to join us and tell us more about why we invested in this deal. And finally, we will grab your questions and try to have answers from Sharon so you can understand deeply what is this investment opportunity and you can decide whether you want to make the move or not. So I will let Sharon join us right now. Sharon, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Leah. It's a real pleasure to be here with you after meeting you in person in Atlanta and then San Francisco earlier this year.
Indeed, it's not our first encounter. And I've heard your story so many times. And, as an investor, I know that growing and leading a successful company really takes a founder that is passionate about the problem that they are solving. And this is what I can feel with you because I know that you created Healthcare Original to solve a problem that is deeply personal. Can you tell us more about how did you come to create this company? What was the problem that you were trying to solve?
Thanks, Leah. Yep. So the problem I am solving with a great team is helping people with asthma and COPD live well with their condition and really making them experts at managing their outcomes. And Leah would have shared already, I did this because of my own lived experience with asthma, where I almost died 5 times. And it was just a constant struggle for my parents to understand what was going on and really live through that because you're living in the constant fear of your kid almost dying. And that's not really good quality of life for me and for them. So this is, when you talk about passion, this is why I do what I do, because the 690 million people that live with the two conditions that we address, asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, deserve much better than we have been getting.
So, can you tell us more about what is Healthcare Original? How do you help patients with asthma and COPD?
So we have a combination of things that we do, but basically I'll start with our proprietary technology, which is, I'm holding it up here. It's a small flexible wearable that is worn on the upper torso, front, side, or back. And what it is you could consider it like a good combination of a stethoscope on steroids and Alexa. So you are familiar with Alexa from Amazon. When you say Alexa, it wakes up, takes the command, and then goes back to sleep. In our case, we have a continuously on stethoscope that is sitting on the torso. I wear mine right underneath here, and it's constantly listening for sounds of our lungs. And what we do then is we take that, when it hears sounds of interest from the lungs, it wakes up, computes that data, and then quietly goes back to sleep, just like Alexa. And what we're able to do with that data is really inform individual insights that is unique, things that are really unique to the person that we're working with. And that data has been shown in studies at the University of Rochester to predict asthma attacks up to 3 months in advance. So it's huge predictive ability with actionable insights. But then we go a step further because it's not enough to tell people, hey, you might be having an attack. What you have to do then is tell people what to do about it. So we provide a system with respiratory therapists that work with the individual, give them self-management education at the point of experience. So a device says this is happening. The respiratory therapist steps in and says, and this is what you should do about it. And over time, people really become experts at managing their care. And it's really a holistic system of care that is resonating with both the people who use it, our members, as well as our customers.
You do know how these asthma crises can be an issue for patients. I'm also aware of it because I shared with you earlier. I have a parent of COPD, and these are really just terrible to watch. But for people here that have never witnessed or lived through an asthma or COPD crisis, can you kind of describe what this is and why is it such a problem for these patients?
Yeah, that's a great question. I often forget that a lot of people may not have had exposure. So fundamentally, these diseases, when you're having an attack, otherwise called an exacerbation or an episode, you can't breathe. And it's debilitating, it's scary. And you can imagine that I always say it, when you can't breathe, nothing else matters. Sometimes it's accompanied by loud, harsh wheezing sounds or gasping sounds. Sometimes it could be as simple as not waking up in the morning because you can't breathe and you're turning blue. That happened to me when I was 5. I had no signs of anything else happening. There was no loud gasping sounds. I just could not get up because I could not get enough oxygen. So, if you've ever seen people taking an inhaler on TV, there's a TV version of an asthma attack or an exacerbation where you see these very dramatic gasps for breath, and then somebody takes an inhaler and they smile. Well, that's a TV version. In real life, it can look many different ways, including for COPD. The net result of all of those things that are visible and not visible is that we're having trouble breathing and we could die. And that is just as simple as I can put it. And it is very scary, as you can imagine, for people living through it, as well as people who love them, who are looking on and feel completely helpless.
Yeah, completely. I think helpless is the right word. Um, so when you put your product into the hands of someone with asthma, COPD, as you just told us, you can predict as soon as 3 months in advance, which is a very long time ahead, whether they're going to have a crisis. What can the patient actually do to prevent the crisis from happening?
That's a question we often get because people are like, so what do you do? There are a multiple of steps that you can do. One, and the first one that we encourage people to do is first be aware of your symptoms. More than 50% of the people in the US with bad outcomes for asthma and COPD are actually unaware of their symptoms. It's because it's not the dramatic thing that you see on TV. You actually have small changes to breath every day that you just do not understand or ignore as something else. So the first thing we do is we kind of go sleuthing with them. We figure out what has changed. And then we go through with them and remove what we call triggers from their surroundings or in their daily life. Maybe it is that there's carpet in the room. Maybe the room hasn't been cleaned. Maybe there's a smoker in the house. Maybe there's poor air quality. If you live in the US right now, there's smoke from the Canadian wildfires all over. A lot of people don't understand that people like us should not be outdoors without a mask. It's actually unhealthy to breathe the air. And there are actually tools available nationwide to help you understand when that air quality is bad. So I would say we act as sleuths with them and encourage them to understand their triggers and start removing them because something must have changed. Then there's also a way for people to take their types of their medications as prophylactic measures as opposed to just after they have attacks. So when we start with an individual, we actually walk through all of that information and gather all of that information for them so that when something is happening, we're able to then pick the thing that is important at that point in time and kind of direct them to it. So a slew of things people can do. We like to call it sleuthing or being detectives with them. And that ability to then help them understand what's going on is what really makes our program really differentiated in terms of outcomes.
I know that you mentioned previously that you have studies that show the effect of your product. So your product is a wearable that is connected to an app solution,
Mhm.
and it helps reduce crisis. Can you tell us more about these studies? What is the data that you
Mhm.
have that proves that indeed Healthcare Originals helps reduce asthma and COPD crisis?
I love talking about those because it's so remarkable. So I'll start with the inception of the device when it was first developed as a very rough prototype at the University of Rochester. 3 studies in teens with asthma. So not saying anything wrong about teens. I was one myself. All of us were, but we know as a teenager, you know everything about everything. So they are typically called the most recalcitrant population on the planet. In this study with teens, there were 3 studies, and the biggest one looked at 42 teens with asthma and 42 teens without asthma. And they showed definitively that the data that the device measured was predictive of poor asthma control, predictive of utilization, ER visits, hospitalizations up to 3 months in advance. And one of the things that came out of the qualitative feedback of that study was teens actually saying, wow, I didn't know how bad my symptoms were yesterday, but they really were bad. And I was just, I wasn't aware, which reinforces other studies that I talked about that shows that people with poor outcomes are really tend to be unaware of their symptoms. Then fast forward to our whole system where we have that holistic system that's both detecting the issues as well as providing the information on what to do about them. We have a published white paper where we talk about our results. 100% of people report reduced symptoms. 90% of them sleep better. If you know anybody with these conditions, at night they tend to be worse, especially when you're lying down. So that 90% sleeping better is significant. And then 2 out of every 3 people who are having attacks every month before joining our program, within 6 to 9 months, have no attacks. And that's huge. Those results from our holistic system, which we call Nightingale, have been verified by the Validation Institute, which is a company that's been around for more than 10 years that has actually validates independently the claims of digital health companies like ours, and they've never been questioned, they've never been in dispute. They have validated that we improve outcomes. They've looked at our raw data and said, yes, everything that they've published is correct. And they have actually backed us up with a $100,000 guarantee. So if any of our customers do not meet the outcomes that we promised them, they will pay them back up to $100,000.
You say something that is so important and really good to understand for people who've never seen asthma or COPD crisis is that it actually prevents people from sleeping. And we all know that sleeping is just one of the most important things. So when you say that, you're basically giving patients back the ability to sleep unbothered. That's a huge, huge, huge deal. I also know that you integrate artificial intelligence into your product. Can you tell us more about that? And do you have any patents that cover that technology?
Yes, I'm so excited about our AI, our AI initiative. That was one of the things that we've had on the drawing board for a while. We just filed our first patent in this space, so now we're building in public and sharing what it is. So when you consider what we're doing from our device, what we're really doing is we are the first in the world to understand and interpret deep organ sounds. While we're starting with the lungs, there are much more applications. As you can imagine, there are many other organs in the body that make sound, and the ability to interpret them in real life and in real time opens a whole new class of non-invasive testing that we think is remarkable. So we have this unique data set from the lungs and other organs that we have that is really unique to us in terms of the fidelity and the clarity of the signal. We have this unique data set of prompts that we know that delivered to the individual based on the feedback from the device actually produce those outcomes. So what we are able to do is train a true AI, so not a large language model wrapper, but a true AI that is both context aware and real time and is able to pass that information and deliver to the individual what they want. So we are building an agentic AI that is context aware and working with real contextualized data that is personalized to the individual. And what that means for us with that patent filing and what we're doing now is that we are able to augment the care that our respiratory therapists provide. From a care perspective, what that means is now we are able to have our respiratory therapists at the right dose. So they are doing the things that only they can do, but all of the other things, including escalations and self-management training, the AI can do. What that means for investors is, of course, that is economies of scale as we scale, because it means that we're really limiting our, really refining our dose of respiratory therapists to individual to make sure that they're being used for the highest impact that they can make.
This is very important what you're saying because for anyone, any investor out there who has been following the crowdfunding market since ChatGPT went out, we just see the number of startups that claim to use AI jump. And I don't think that most of them can really build a true AI that adds real value in just a couple of months. And you have something that you can back with a patent filing. This is extremely important. This really adds value to the company. So congrats on filing it. That's such an amazing development.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk a little bit about sales. I know that you have 5.5 million in annual recurring revenue, and a lot of it happened recently. So can
Mhm.
you tell us about, what this contract is about? How did you grow that ARR that quickly?
Yes. So we a lot of people think we sell to healthcare providers. In actual fact, we do not. We sell to people who benefit when we keep people out of the hospital and the ER. So in most fee-for-service or provider relationships, that's not the hospital system. It is instead insurance companies or payers. That could be managed care organizations, but it's also employers. So a little known fact is employers cover more than half of the insurable lives in the US. So they a lot, and when they're of a certain size, they do something called self-insurance, which means that they take the risk of insurance on themselves. So a lot of employers are seeing a lot of increases. For example, our plan is going to see a 25% increase next year. Me as an employer, that's what I'm looking at. So there's a real need from employers to actually do anything they can to reduce the cost of care. And so that's who we sell to. And what we recently signed was a contract with the Lehigh Valley Business Coalition on Health. They are a coalition that is more than 45 years old, that is made up of employers who have banded together and said, we want to reduce the cost of healthcare, so we're going to negotiate as a body. And they cover more than 400,000 lives. And so we are now the exclusive virtual respiratory care provider for the Lehigh Valley Business Coalition on Health, and we are able to then sell to their members and help them reduce costs. So the contract value is 5.8 million in annual recurring revenue. That is not based on saying everybody will use us. We're actually projecting that only based on 40 to 50% of the people with asthma and COPD using us. So there's opportunity to grow beyond our projection, but we always tend to be a little bit conservative so investors understand that we are not crazy people. And beyond that, one thing you didn't, so that how we were able to land that contract is through hard work. So nothing in healthcare moves quickly. If you're a healthcare investor, you know that there's actually a lot of talk out there now about cockroaches, and the best companies are like cockroaches because they stick around and they stick to it. That's healthcare originals. Um, so we actually began conversations with Lehigh Valley in November of 2023. And then late last year, we went through an RFP, RFI, request for proposals, request for information process with them. We pitched to their procurement committee in February. We were awarded the we knew we won in March, but we finally signed the contract in May, and then we made the announcement in June. So you can see in healthcare, it's just a long time, but really deals like that is why we opened this round now, because we knew it took time. We knew that we were at the point when our funnel was starting to deliver,
Mm.
and that is how, we're able. It seems like it's quick, but it's not. It's really been a disciplined sales process that we've been going on. And we have a lot of deals like that in the pipeline. And while that's a huge contract, one of the ones that I'm most really proud of is that the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America, the leading advocate for people with asthma and allergies in the country, chose us to roll out our solution in Texas for one of their populations. So they are working with us, and that project is going live. And they awarded it to us in February. So lots of great things happening in commercial traction, but that's been going on for a while, and we're starting to see the results now in good time for all of our investors.
That's amazing, definitely. I mean, if I know that your raise has been open for a little while now, so it seems that investors have been waiting, for August to kind of make the move, just get better information about your company and better progress. So that's exciting.
Mhm,
I'm understanding that your go-to-market strategy is to sell directly to the entities that actually are going to pay for the product.
mhm.
But I'm wondering, do you still have to market to the end users? How the actual patient adoption happen?
Yes, we in all of those scenarios, you have to market to the end users, but that has never been a problem for us. I'll give you an example. We won a grant a couple of years ago to from the American Heart Association to roll out our solution in underserved areas in upstate New York. And we ran simple social media ads with good targeting. And for 100 slots, we had 1,000 people sign up in 1 week. So we understand uniquely how to get to the end user, much more than other conditions like diabetes and hypertension, though. When you have these conditions, you know that you need help and you're eager to sign on. So we don't have a lot of hurdles to overcome. On my team, I have Cameron Jaycox, who helped to scale Lark Health to the diabetes unicorn that it is today. And that's all he did all day, every day. It was understand how to engage members and get them to sign on. When he started as employee number 9, when Lark had little to no revenue, and now they're a unicorn. So not saying it's just about the product, but we also have the team in place with the experience of how to get it done.
You showed us your wearable
Mhm,
earlier, and so we understand as investors that manufacturing must be kind of a key component of your business.
mhm.
Can you tell us more about, how you will be able to scale manufacturing as your company grows? And you just talked about the team. So do you have people with manufacturing experience on the team?
Yeah, that is, but I have a differentiated background, but I spent over uh, more than a decade in manufacturing. I have actually built factories in my lifetime, and I actually have deployed innovation as a buyer and as a developer of innovation in various countries across the world. So manufacturing is my bread and butter, but my co-founder, Jared, also is a manufacturing expert who has led teams of hundreds in manufacturing environments. Between us, there's very little in manufacturing we haven't seen. How we're going to scale across the world is we have been very thoughtful and deliberate and employed best practices in understanding our manufacturing. So we have developed a full design file that is portable from manufacturer to manufacturer. So while we manufacture in the US currently, we when we outgrow capacity on the current manufacturer, we're able to take that file, onboard someone else with more or complementary capacity, do a test run, and then just confirm that they're meeting our quality standards and go again. Um, for most companies, hardware scaling is a big deal. For us, given our skill set. It really is one area in which we excel.
Okay, that's amazing. Have one last question for you, and then we'll bring on my colleague Teddy. But before
Mhm.
Teddy joins us, let's talk about competition a little bit. Can you
Yes.
tell us about who is your closest competitor and how do you differentiate from them?
Yeah, we have a couple of what I would call fast followers who are making claims about being similar to us from a detection of abnormal lung sounds. Um, One is a phone-based app called Hive, and the problem with so no digs at anybody. The problem with phone-based apps is you can't get the wealth of data that we get, and we have some great new studies that show just how differentiated our data is. Happy to talk about those. But really, phone-based apps are not for, they're not specific to the individual. So you have to do a lot. Their device hogs, battery hogs, and there's no ability for continuous monitoring. They're great for diagnosis. So we like those applications. There's another company called Stratos Labs, and they have stayed in the clinical trial space, partnering and looking at deep features for clinical trials. We were first in that market. We view it as a very small, not remarkable venture backable outcome. We still remain, and we have data that shows that what we detect, and I'll call them the features of the lung sounds we detect, are really differentiated. More than that, we are the first to market that has wrapped our wearable in a clinical system of care that addresses the individual holistically. So we haven't stopped as a device. We haven't stopped at these are interesting biomarkers or digital biomarkers, and hey, this is this new class of digital biomarkers. We've gone full strength into actually improving outcomes. And more than just the device, which is highly differentiated and around which we have 14 patents allowed and 10 pending. It really is about that holistic system of care that actually produces results. And I would say from an investment perspective, there's a clearer line to a pathway to unicorn status because there's a real market that needs to have people, needs to reduce cost of care. And we found that market and have go-to-market first mover advantage.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Sharon. I know I've asked you a lot of questions. So if any investor here has questions, please drop them in the Q&A. I see that we already have a couple, so we're going to make sure to go through them very quickly. But before we do that, we are going to welcome my colleague, Teddy Lyons. Teddy is senior investment associate like me, and he's actually specialized and very smart when it comes to analyzing healthcare and biotech deals. He led this deal. So Teddy, we're so happy to have you here. Please let us know why were you so excited about an investment in Healthcare Originals?
Yes, thank you for that intro. Leah, Sharon, great to see you again. So yeah, so I met Sharon back in December, and as Leah mentioned, I kind of lead our medical device and early stage pharma deals at Kingscrowd Capital. So yeah, when I first met Sharon last year, I was immediately impressed, obviously, not only with her abilities as an entrepreneur and kind of the journey of getting healthcare originals off the ground, but with her deep knowledge of kind of the issues that COPD and asthma patients really go through, and kind of drawing from her own personal experience for that, which is always very, very great to see in a founder. And so when I first kind of was reviewing healthcare originals, I didn't have much experience with medical devices, specifically in the asthma or COPD space. So wasn't super familiar with, the market opportunity, how big of the problem, how big is the need. But was immediately pretty shocked by some of the statistics of, respiratory illnesses affecting 690 million people globally, 30,000 asthma attacks per day in the US, 15,000 COPD hospital visits. So kind of immediately that kind of drew me in to look deeper into healthcare originals, and kind of seeing what the company was doing, and how it was addressing this problem in a new way. So the main kind of three reasons why Kingscrowd Capital eventually decided to invest in HCO was three main factors: strong traction, efficacy data, and its prior venture backing. So Leigh and Sharon have already touched on quite a lot of this, but kind of what we love to see as VC investors is technology that's validated, especially in medical devices, technology that's validated by both strong patient study data and revenue. And that kind of de-risks the opportunity in a way that we don't normally see in startup investing. So as Sharon already mentioned, over 5.5 million ARR, 5.8 million ARR, and we're very strong validation studies at University of Rochester and the Validation Institute. So, that was very impressive that HCO was really able to validate its product and technology without actually going through an FDA approval process, and is able to actually have contracted revenue without FDA approval. And kind of was able to really prove out the product market fit before actually moving into an FDA approval process. So, now that the product market fit is clearly there with all this contracted ARR, HCO can really kind of move into potentially getting an FDA approval that will unlock greater use cases and expansion opportunities and things like that. And lastly, of course, strong VC backing from Sapphire Partners, Cranberry Capital, and Allen Family Capital. So having VC backing, of course, isn't a requirement to get an investment from Kingscrowd Capital, but it kind of adds a layer of de-risk to an opportunity, because not only have we done our very in-depth due diligence, and Sharon can attest that I grilled her with like a million questions, both over calls and over email. So not only did we do our own due diligence, of course, but kind of having prior VC backers that are participating in the new round kind of shows that they did all their due diligence and also are participating. So adds a layer of de-risk there. Um, so yeah, so those are kind of the three main points, and something I wanted to ask Sharon specifically around the FDA approval aspect of this all. And I know that was one of the questions we had from the crowd. So kind of how do you think about FDA approval? Why did you not kind of go for that at first, even though that's generally what early stage med tech companies do? And kind of when will you move into that process, and what will it kind of unlock in the future?
Great question. It's always asked. So my answer to that is taking off my passionate founder hat and putting on my investment hat. I used to have to justify investments all the time at my previous job. There's a graveyard of companies who've won FDA approval at significant cost without first proving product market fit. FDA approval in itself is not a guarantee that anybody will buy your product. And so what we did was, you were exactly right, Teddy. We chose to develop product market fit first. We have met with the FDA. They are aware of our product, and our intent is to go and file 510(k) clearance. We have a clearly established predicate, and that will allow us to make different claims. Right now, what we're doing is really tailoring our claims so that we do not run afoul of the requirements that the FDA has for people like us marketing. And what that also means is, of course, we're not unleashing the full power of the device, nor do consumers use it like that. This is to us a less capital intensive strategy in terms of getting that product market fit first and then getting FDA. You can imagine, had we spent lots of money getting to the FDA and then had to wait through that 12 to 18-month process that we talked about for the sales cycle to work, that was going to be extraordinarily painful. So history will prove us right or wrong, but every sign right now points to us being right in that judgment.
Got it.
Kind of
Oh,
following up on that, if you don't mind, Teddy.
sure.
Once you have FDA clearance, is that going to open any new market for you? How is that going to change the company?
It will, the way I look at it is, where we have early adopters now who understand that there really is no risk, we will be able to exploit that market fully without that. What FDA clearance in our case will unlock is, those middle, your adoption curve goes like this, right? Those middle and tail end users who really want to see something like that, that will allow us to penetrate more deeply. It will also potentially unlock different use cases, but in terms of how we think about our revenue for the next 2 to 3 years, not significantly. I say that with the caveat that regulations change all the time, so we are keeping an eye on what's going on at the federal level to make sure that we're not running afoul of anything if we need to change that tactic. Yeah.
Thank you, Teddy, for letting me follow on that.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I also wanted to ask, so on your raise page, it mentioned over kind of 12,000 patients on the sort of wait list. So curious what will unlock that kind of pipeline of users. I assume it has something to do with like state by state insurance registration, things like that.
Yes. State by state insurance, payers agreeing to work with us as a covered benefit. A mix as well, because there are some employed people in there. So when you think about how we sign with employers, it is finding those groups where we have large numbers of people, getting their employers, and then signing them on. So the issue is around tapping the data that we have from those 12,000 signups and understanding which markets we can go in first and have a user base. Yeah.
Got it.
Great. Another question that I see on the Q&A, how many providers do you have on your platform assisting patients and how are they compensated?
Yeah, so we use respiratory therapists, wellness coaches, and we do have behavioral health therapists as well. We compensate them a little bit higher than market rates. What we do systematically is we use them, we contract with them as contractors until such time as we meet what we look at as our golden ratio for the number of patients to that ratio of patient to therapist. Once we have enough loading of that therapist, we bring them full time. So we do have a national network of pulmonologists that we're building out. A couple of pulmonologists registered in licensed in all 50 states, but that is not the core of what we're doing. We're not providing deep pulmonology services. We focus on respiratory therapists, health and wellness coaches, and behavioral health therapists.
Amazing. The following question in the Q&A, not really a question. This is from Douglas Walton. I don't know if you sit on your end, Sharon, but he's kind of wondering if you'd be interested in trying to get a contract with the Veterans Administrations there. And it seems like this is someone who's listening to us and who does have asthma and who does kind of understand what are some of the problems with pre-OPD, and he seems very excited. Maybe you could tell him, how can he contact you, or how can maybe anybody else who wants to kind of follow up further contact you?
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be great. So Douglas, I'm familiar with Douglas. He's connected with me on LinkedIn. He's very enthusiastic. I believe Douglas, I've emailed you as well because Douglas was at our AI webinar. I appreciate you so much for your service. And yes, absolutely, veterans are really subject to respiratory conditions because of all of the burn pits that were in the news many years ago. And so that is a key use case for us. And we have been looking for warm introductions. So happy to take those. And anyone can contact me at firstname.lastname@healthcareoriginals.com. Or you can go to our WeFunder page, which is probably easier, wefunder.com/HCO.
Last question that I see on the Q&A, and if anybody else listening here has questions, you still have time to drop them. Did you mention that you had venture capital funding? And I know that Teddy kind of gave us the information already, so maybe you can tell more.
Yes.
Was it hard to have that VC funding? Who is investing in? Why does this matter for you?
Yep. So we have 3 venture capital firms that have invested in us. We have our lead investor in this round is Sapphire Partners. They are a venture capital firm out of Boston with more than $1 billion in assets under management, and they focus on people who've spun out technologies from Harvard, MIT, and the University of Rochester. So I like to tell people they've invested in nuclear fusion and they've invested in us. So it kind of tells you how deep they go into deep tech. Our other venture investors, Cranberry Capital, a family office/venture capital firm that was our first external capital. Chloe Capital backs women founders. And we have a family office that's significant, the Allen Family Capital Fund. So if you have ever gone to the doctor's office and you've seen Welch Allen written anywhere on those devices, that is the family that is our second largest investor. They sold their company a few years ago, and their family office has invested in us. It really, why that's important to us, we have the best of the best in hardware investors who understand medical devices deeply and are really in tune with our mission. Why I like our venture capital investors as well is they are big supporters of us being on a a Reg CF round. And in fact, they have extended exactly the same terms that they have invested on to the Reg CF community, and that includes warrants. So warrants are typically not offered on WeFunder. In fact, we are the first company to offer warrants on WeFunder, but that was because we and our venture partners were so interested in making sure that we had the same terms for everyone. And venture backing is important for us because, as Teddy said, it's important to understand that somebody's done due diligence, they were willing to lead a round, and they saw that this could scale to a venture backable exit, which is important because that means they're looking to us to return their entire fund. They see that their investment in us can yield up to $300 million, which was the size. Their part of it can yield them up to $300 million, which was the size of their first fund. And that's really the key that a lot of people don't get with venture capital, where every investment they make, they must see that there is a potential for that investment to return the entire fund in which that they are investing out of. And that's what the stamp means. A venture company backing you means that that is what they see as your potential exit. And so we're great fans of all of our venture investors.
Amazing. And yeah, like Teddy says, that it does de-risk kind of the investment opportunity. So
Yeah.
very excited and congrats. I see another question in the Q&A. Someone is asking if you could go over your margins.
Yep. Happy to give you what is non-competitive information that I'm okay to disclose in public, but always happy to have a conversation where we can go into more detail as well. We make extraordinary margins at the device level. And when we think about the full care model, which includes our therapists, we make margins in the top 10% of digital health companies, declared digital health companies, their margins. So we're quite sure that what we're doing is scalable and gives us enough contribution to fund overheads. In fact, we're projecting that we will be cash flow positive within the next 18 months.
That's definitely very exciting as well.
Yes.
I see that there's no more investor questions so far in the Q&A. Teddy, is there, anything, I know you know this company so much, but anything that Sharon should be telling investors before we close or before we get new questions?
Yeah, so kind of while we were at least a second ago on the subject of VC investors, so curious kind of what the milestones are for this raise and kind of what you need to hit before raising, if you do plan to raise another round later on, kind of what needs to happen before getting there.
Yeah. So our goal for we view that we will have only one more round of capital that we will raise before not needing to raise anymore because we will be cash flow positive. And our milestone for that is hitting $500,000 in monthly recurring revenue, which allows us to get a good size step up in valuation. And our forecast right now, and I have to give the caveat, forecasts are not guaranteed, but right now we're anticipating that we will be there in the next 9 months. So we'll be opening up again at a much higher valuation. I can add a couple of things as we have some time. One of the things that I liked about the Kingscrowd analysis, and everybody should go take a look at it, is when we saw it, we smiled because some of the things that we scored a little bit low on in terms of team, etc., we knew that we were going to fill out some of those spaces. So now we're in a much different position from that initial analysis, but it showed how spot on Kingscrowd was, and we were able to show that we are addressing those things. The other thing I will say is kind of like a sneak peek and an exclusive for the Kingscrowd people listening to us. I'm thrilled to share that we have positive indications from a study in which we've collaborated with the University of Alberta in Canada that shows that we have remarkable applicability in interstitial lung diseases, conditions like idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And there will be 2 papers published in the coming 3 to 4 weeks, one in the American Journal of Medicine, which is a premier journal, and in the International Journal of Tuberculosis and Lung Diseases, we'll have another study published using our wearable. And what this shows to our investors and everybody listening here is when we talk about the fact that we are expanding into other use cases, it's not just talk. Things have been in the works for a really long time. So this study has been going on for a long time. They have remarkable results that can only be developed from our wearable. So now we will start building out a use case in idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And then when we talk about the fact that we can expand to other organs that we can listen to deep organ sounds for, trust us in that we're that company that says things only when we're sure of it. So you'll see on our updated We Fund page that we've talked about expanding into IPF, and in 2 to 4 weeks, you'll see the public evidence of that, and we'll share it with our community around the publication in these really highly respected journals. So an exclusive for everybody who joined this webinar.
Amazing. Well, I see that there are no more questions in the Q&A. These are very exciting milestones that I'm sure you're going to be able to hit soon. So thank you so much, Sharon, for spending time with us today and giving really investors an in-depth overview of the investment opportunity. Thank you, Teddy, for explaining why you were so excited about investing in healthcare originals. And thank you to everyone who listened to us today. If you want to learn more about Sharon's company, Healthcare Original, you can go on kingscrowd.com, and you can also find over there even more exciting investment opportunities. Thank you, everyone, and I hope to see you soon in new Kingscrowd investor events.